Good afternoon, colleagues. It's lovely to see you this afternoon. Thank you for joining us again out of school hours, which isn't ideal. I know you'll have had an extremely hectic day, very long day, no doubt, coming towards the end of a very long term as well. So, you know, huge appreciation that you're here. Really, really pleased that you could make it, and hope that it's going to be a really useful session for you. If you can keep your microphones on mute whilst we're into the session, that would be great. Obviously, where there's parts where Ruth's asking you to get involved, then please do unmute. If you want to keep your cameras on though, that's absolutely wonderful, because it gives us some faces to sort of get some reactions from in terms of what we're talking about. So if you can, please do put your cameras on. It's lovely to see you. Don't worry about what's in your background. It's absolutely fine. In terms of Zoom, hopefully you're quite familiar with that. Please do use the chat. If you've got any problems at all, put that on the chat and I'll be able to hopefully help you. I think we'll probably be going into a breakout room or so in a short time. So please do use your camera and your microphone if you are in a breakout room. If you haven't got that facility, maybe stay in the main room, or please let me know. But obviously we get feedback from colleagues that say they've been in breakout rooms where people have not been able to have the cameras on, and that's obviously not conducive to networking. So please let us know if there's any problems with those. I'll tell you a little bit later on about the dates and what's happening for next term, because we're still online next term, sadly. But I'll give you that information as we go through. And I'm going to pass straight over to Ruth now to head into the session without any further ado. So welcome.
Great. Lovely to see everybody. Obviously, I saw some of you at the CLP conference, which we're going to talk about very briefly this evening, but obviously we've got another one of those coming up soon, which will be great. In true me style, I have overplanned and will under-deliver, which is the, you know, it is my my main mode of training. I've looked at all your feedback previously. We can't make sure that we meet the needs of everyone, but we're hoping we meet the needs of a fair few of you tonight. I think one of the reasons there's a lot tonight is because I've got quite a lot of updates for you, which isn't always the case. In fact, I remember I had a slide last year that just had some tumbleweed on it. So that's kind of filled the agenda a little bit tonight. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And you know I'm going to read you a story. There's not going to be any surprises there. So I'm going to do a read aloud of Felix After the Rain. Some of you might know this book. It's been quite well publicised, actually. It won last year's PEN Award, which is the award for books in translation. It was originally written in Italian. We did ask you to bring picture books with you this time. So I'm hoping you've got some picture books with you. I'm going to have a go at a book wave, but you may not want to join in. It's going to be completely up to you. The idea of the book wave is you turn your camera on. Even if you haven't got a picture book, I really would love it if as many as you as possible have your cameras on. It just makes my job so much easier. And you just hold your picture book up to the camera and we all look at each other's books. We all flip between screens and we look at all the books that people are holding up. So that's what we're going to do there. I've got a few books to recommend, as always. I'm only recommending books tonight that I've put onto the slides, because somebody did say you recommend loads of books, we don't always get a chance to write them down, and then there's no list afterwards, which is quite frustrating. So I'm not going to talk about books unless they're on slides tonight. Amongst all of the updates, Helen is going to talk about a little Sutton Hub event, so we'll talk about that during updates. We're then going to talk about leadership tonight. I don't think English leaders have ever been tested like they are being tested at this moment in time, certainly during my career. And so I thought it was really important to sort of, and this is based on some of your feedback, come back to this idea that English is the preeminent subject within the curriculum and you lead it. That makes your role incredibly important. So we are going to look at effective English leadership tonight, which is a bit of a, I don't know, a bit different from maybe what I would normally do. And then subject knowledge, I'm going to talk about writing for pleasure. Now, I was going to talk about reading, but all the schools I've worked with recently have said writing is a bigger priority for us at this moment in time. I've called it writing for pleasure, but I'm actually also going to talk about moderation, because I think that's a really pressing issue for everybody, with the assessment processes being similar to this year. Okay, the delightful book Felix After the Rain, which I'm hoping I've got here somewhere. No? Okay. Felix was a terribly unhappy boy. He dragged an enormous suitcase behind him wherever he went, but he didn't know what was inside. Something dark had appeared in the suitcase when Grandma died. Something hurtful had hidden inside when his friends made fun of him. Something bothersome had burrowed its way in when Dad told him off. The suitcase became heavier and heavier. Felix could barely manage to push it along. If only he could leave it somewhere and escape across the ocean. But the sea was so rough and the winds were so wild. Grandma used to say to Felix that the sun always shines after the rain, and that after an uphill climb, there's a downhill stroll. One day, Felix reached the top of the hill, puffing and panting. He lay down in the shade and fell asleep. A small boy was playing nearby. He caught sight of the suitcase, crept towards it, and opened it. All of a sudden, the sky turned grey. Felix found himself in the middle of a storm. He felt a rumble in his head, and his eyes filled with tears that ran down his cheeks like rain. When the storm had settled, Felix felt calm too. "What did you do with that suitcase?" he asked the curious boy. He just smiled, and Felix thanked him. Felix came down from the hilltop, and he looked at the clouds in the sky. He smelt the blossom on the trees and listened to the hum of a friendly breeze. Without a care in the world, he leapt towards the clear blue sea. I feel like a fish in water. Felix was so happy, he wanted to give everyone a hug. And everyone gently hugged Felix. I'm just really taken with the colours in this book and the contrast between the colours. So what I'd like you to do really quickly to get us all talking is write a 3-word review of Felix After the Rain in the chat box. And remember, and we have to do this with the children as well, you're allowed to not like it. You don't have to like it. So just 3 words that you think sum up Felix After the Rain. Oh, I like it. Oh, Thomas, I want to talk to you about that now. I want to know if you wanted more because you loved it or you wanted more because you felt it was lacking. Anyone else? Oh, I love it. Lots to discuss. Excellent. I like comforting. He wanted a hug at the end. Isn't that so like of the moment? Reassuring, beautiful, uplifting. When things are reassuring, it means the book is a mirror. It's saying something about how we might feel. Vibrant, different views. That's quite a nice combination of words, quite an unusual combination of words. It's definitely like Pandora's box. Very artistic, fun. These are great. Thank you, everybody. What I like about it is, you could say it's a bit sentimental, but actually the whole thing is a metaphor, isn't it? When he reaches the top of the hill, he hasn't reached the top of the hill. He's reached the end of his rope, hasn't he, emotionally? And he just sits down and he's done. And so the little boy kind of represents that person who unlocks your need to talk about things and get upset in order to feel better. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. Another fantastic, in my world, you don't have to agree with me, but another fantastic recovery text. I've also got a little treat for you. I meant to say this before, actually, because I've packed a lot in tonight. There are some slides that I'm not going to go into in detail. They're there as a resource for you. And what you know about me is I don't tend to send you lots of additional resources. I like most of the resources to be part of the PowerPoint. So a very, very good colleague of mine called Rebecca Kennedy, who, if you've ever worked in Birmingham, you'll probably know she works as part of the moderation team in Birmingham. She's also an amazing English expert and reads more children's books than any other human being I know. She has let me share this with you. So this is Beck's work. You will recognise this. It's called Mapping Text Potential. I've shared it with you before. And it's this idea that when we have a great book that we want to present to the children, it's really important that we know that book inside out. We know what the book is good for, what its potential is. And this is from Guiding Readers' Layers of Meaning, of which Nikki Gamble is one of the authors. And she devised these 12 things that we need to think about before we even start planning from a great text. So I'm not going to go into this tonight. It's not the focus of tonight's session, but I thought if you're interested in that book, you might like Beck's resource, where she's broken it down into these different categories for you. And I've also got, this is just this is an example of how Beck maps books potential. So she's got like a room full of children's books, and every single one of them, and you'll know this from the way you approach reading children's books, I'm sure, is packed full of markers and post-it notes and scribbles. And when she's thinking about how it's written, the craft within the book, the teaching potential of the book. What I've also got for you here is some teaching ideas beyond that and how it links to the national curriculum. And that's 3-4 curriculum. And then some actual, if I'm going to do writing and I'm going to write journals, how am I going to do it? So some actual teaching ideas as well. They're all there for you if you're interested in teaching this book. I can't really emphasize enough how useful that mapping a text potential exercise is. And I know I've talked to you about it before, but it's now become a really essential tool in my toolkit. And if you're really looking to develop your teacher's subject knowledge around using high quality texts, it's a fantastic starting, so don't forget about it. Right, we're going to try the book wave, so I'm actually going to stop sharing just for a moment. We've only got like a handful of cameras on, so I'm guessing this might not work, but we did ask you to bring pitch books following the CLPE session. Oh yes. What we're going to do is hold them up. I'm going to spot one that I like the look of and then ask someone to talk, and then they're going to spot one they like the look of. We've got a few more cameras on, so if I count to 3, if you hold up your books, book in car, I love that, don't worry. Okay. Oh, some interesting ones. Oh, I know which one I want to hear about. I'm going to start with, I really want to hear about that one as well, because that's a book I've never bought and I really want. I'm going to start with Kate. Sorry to pick on you, Kate. Don't worry if you feel uncomfortable. Just a couple of words is fine. I've just bought a book about rainbows, and yours really appeals to me because of that. What? Tell me about your book.
So I literally saw it at the weekend, and it's a book all about the rainbows in the NHS, like putting them in the window. And it starts off with a girl. It's basically about lockdown, and they start off at home, and her mom's saying about all rainstorms must end, and this rainstorm will too. And it's just their journey through lockdown, really, and just her missing her friends and her family. And then at the end, there's a really lovely picture of them all under the rainbow. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, I love it.
And it's just a metaphor really about lockdown. And I read it to my class yesterday, and we're doing some wellbeing assemblies each week, and we picked the emotion of safe. And I read this book to them, and then we read it on the assembly as well. So it's a really, really lovely book, and the children all related to it really, really well. So yeah, it's really nice.
That's great. And it just demonstrates that whole mirrors and windows thing again. Children need books maybe that reassure them that what they've been through, they're not alone. They see their own experience.
Yeah, and through each page in the book, the children go, oh, we did that. And it's just about like the struggle that they had at home and missing the classroom and missing their friends. It's a really lovely book. Really nice.
Thank you so much for that. Sorry, I am going to pick on someone now.
No?
Actually, Kate, if we all hold our books up, will you choose a book for someone to talk about?
Yeah, I'd love to. Let's have a look.
There's 2 of my probably top 10 books held up at the moment.
Oh, Natalie's got one that I've seen before, and I've heard a lot about that one. Is it called The Boy, the Mole? Yeah, that one. I can't quite read the title. Too close.
The Fox and the Horse.
I couldn't unmute myself for a while. Yeah, it's called The Fox and the Horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this book. It's kind of my mantra. We used it as a recovery, as our part of our recovery curriculum across the school. So we had it from reception all the way up to year 6. It's basically based on kind of a philosophy of life, living your life in a kind way, and it's about this relationship between these 4 characters. And I've even had a T-shirt with one of the quotes printed on there. But it really is lovely, and it does really resonates with the children, and they can and it's fun. It has a mole that just loves eating cake, and so it's got quite a lot of humour in it. But also on top of that, I don't know if you can see that the illustrations are absolutely wonderful. So yeah, and the children absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it and got lots of rich language and activities out of this book, as well as art, etc. So yeah, great book.
I like the way it looks, like a very sort of, it almost looks like someone's journal, doesn't it? It's a very friendly book.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. There's even a coffee stain where he's put his coffee in there. Yeah, it's written. It's so. I think that's why I think the children like it so much, because it just feels like something that they could reproduce. It's just it's just a flow of words, really, rather than an actual heavy narrative. It's quite a fluid. Yeah, great.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Natalie. Book I haven't bought yet, but I hear about all the time. Do you want to, we'll do it again, we'll do it once more. Hold up your books again. And Natalie, do you want to choose someone this time?
Oh, right. Right, there's one at the top there, but I can't actually see. There's a man with a, I think it's a dog. He's got a suitcase at the top. Yeah, that's it. I can't see your name on Thomas.
Okay, over to you, Thomas, for a minute.
I wish it was a dog. It's like I don't really know what it is. It's a bit of a strange creature. This book actually was recommended to me last year, and we used it with our year 6s who were in school, our key worker children, when they were kind of coming back, and it was so brilliant, some of the stuff we got out of it. We've actually put it into the curriculum this year and used it, and it's basically the story of a man who goes and leaves his family and goes to an unknown place which seems very futuristic, and it just tells them, it just kind of speaks the message of going to somewhere new and not knowing anything. Everything's so strange. Whether it be going to a different country or whatever it might be. He's got no language, he doesn't understand the customs or the cultures, and then it all comes around full circle where he's kind of got himself settled, and then somebody new arrives, and he then goes to speak to them to kind of get them into the way of life. So yeah, it's really good. It's all kind of in black and white, kind of drawings and big, very in like a comic book strip almost in places. So yeah, it's really, really good, and we got some really good writing from the kids out of it last year, so it was brilliant.
Is it Sean Tan?
Yeah, Sean Tan. Yeah, I probably should have opened with that.
No, it's all right. It's just so people can reference it. Wordless pitch books, very popular at the moment for exploring emotions and story structure and things like that. That's a wonderful suggestion. Is there anybody who hasn't talked about their book? If you just put your actual real hand up and has a burning desire to, that I haven't come to. Yes, Helen, go on.
Hello.
Hi, Helen.
I discovered this book by chance. I was looking for something different for World Book Day to share with year 6 and wanted a picture book, just something that wasn't going to be heavy text, but that they could engage with, that would be at their level. And this was one of those Amazon recommends, and you go on for a while, and I came across this and got really excited about it. So it's by an Argentinian, he calls himself an illustrator, not a writer. His name's Ducour, and this is his first full feature book. And it's about a boy and his mom that leave the city to go and live in the middle of nowhere. And it's about his mum wanting him to get off his phone, which my year 6 is really connected with. And it was a good way in. And the title, When You Look Up, is all about what his mum wanting him to enjoy the world around him and appreciate it. She keeps pointing stuff out and he's a bit, yeah, whatever, I'm texting. And it goes on like that for a little while, and then takes a strange turn when the boy finds a book in a writing desk in the new house. And it then all goes a little bit surreal. So it's kind of this kind of style. It's beautifully illustrated. And then it goes into the book that he's discovered, and they're all paper cutouts. And parts of it are graphic novel inspired as well. But there's so many connections through it that as we were reading, the children were, oh, that's that. And, you know, there were these little moments of discovery, and they wanted to know more because the boy's discovering in his real world as the characters' lives are changing in the book he finds. I can't say much more without giving it away, but it has some interesting little twists to it. And it's about his journey of discovering himself and appreciating life and people and the world that he lives in. But my year 6s loved it. They didn't want me to stop reading it. They were completely hooked.
That's fantastic. It looks really intriguing. I'm going to go away and look at that. Really good. And there's so many amazing international books. We often only see the ones that are published, you know, in this country, but there's so many amazing American picture books, some fantastic. My favorite graphic novel, Night Lights, is a Brazilian book. It's always worth looking up, you know, looking to see what else is out there. Interesting, there's a real theme throughout those books around recovery. I think we're all thinking about it at the moment. It was really interesting. I was working with someone this week and he said, I've written my curriculum vision, but I'm really struggling to work out how I can link it to, I think his head had asked him to link it to personal development. And I'm like, you're an English teacher. Everything we do is about personal development. It's almost like a PSHE curriculum, isn't it? The English curriculum. Can I thank you all? That worked really well. I'd love to do something similar next time. So if you can always just bring a book along, I'm not going to dictate what type of book this time, but if you could to the next meeting and be brave enough to show it on screen and talk about it, that'd be amazing. The people that have talked about their books, can you just put the name and author into the chat, just in case someone was really interested and didn't quite catch it as you were talking. Thank you, everybody. Right, I'm going to share my screen again. These are the books that I want to recommend tonight. I've had a love affair with David Lucas for a while. So these books are all for, I would say, some of them squeak into year 2, but mainly early years and year 1. But in terms of recovery texts, David Lucas, and if you're a CLPE school, you might have met him because he did a talk in Rugby, was it? I can't remember. But his books are all about, I'm looking for them, I haven't got them with me, emotions, displacement, feeling unloved, but they always end well, reasonably well. If you know The Robot and the Bluebird, it isn't a perfect ending. It's very quite an emotional ending. But all the main characters, the cat, the robot, and Halibut Jackson in all 3 of these books are on the edge of society in some way. The cat's having an identity crisis, and spends the whole book trying to work out what he's for, which is quite funny. The robot is at the end of his life. He's rusted. He doesn't feel like he has any purpose anymore until he meets the Bluebird. And then Halibut Jackson is incredibly shy. And he's a tailor, and he deliberately makes himself suits that blend into the background. So when he's standing by a wall, he'll be wearing a suit with bricks all over it. So he's really, really shy and just doesn't want to sort of put himself out there. David Lucas is brilliant at connecting awkward people with the world. And I really recommend looking into any of his books, to be honest. Overwhelming emotions. So I've been thinking about this as well. A lot of children. I've been thinking about my sister who's autistic, and she hated school. She still hates school. I think she's slightly uncomfortable about the fact that I became a teacher, and she keeps saying to me, I would be devastated about going back to school. I would have loved learning online. I would have loved not having to socialize and work with other people and work with a partner. She said it would have been bliss for me. And I think, and you are in a position I'm not in, you're dealing with children every day. I think there might be some unrecognized anxiety around returning to school. Everybody keeps talking about how exciting it is to be back at school. The children have missed it so much. But whether that's true for all children, I would doubt. So I've got 3 books here about children who can't control their anger or can't control their emotions. Actually, they're all about anger, really. 2 classics, which you'll know, Not Now, Bernard, obviously one of the best picture books of all time, and Angry Arthur. Both of these were published in the early 80s, both of them in print, both of them are excellent books. Angry Arthur is about a boy who gets so angry that he ends up shattering the world in half. And at the end of the story, I don't mean to spoil it for you, he's sat on a bit of the moon, or a little fragment of the earth, and he's floating around space, and he's saying to himself, do you know what, I can't even remember what I was angry about now. And Sweep is a very modern book. So this is by Louise Gregg, who has been nominated for so many awards but hasn't won one yet. She also wrote Nightbox, if you know that book. And this is about, it's a metaphor, and the main character's emotions, he gets swept up in his emotions and he ends up sweeping leaves to begin with, and that represents his anger. And then he starts sweeping people into the pile of leaves, and cars and things in the environment and animals, and it's just this idea that he's swept away with his emotion. So yeah, books connect us to the world. This is the book I was talking about earlier. If you don't know it, again, it's been publicized quite a lot. Rain Before Rainbows. This is about good stuff often comes off the back of bad stuff. It's a really hopeful book. It's written in the style of a poem, and it's illustrated by David Litchfield. If you don't know David Litchfield, he wrote The Bear and the Piano, and which won a few awards a couple of years ago. The illustrations are extraordinary. So even if the rhyme doesn't grab you, even though it's beautifully written, there's so much you can do with the pictures because they're so detailed and so vibrant. These are all books that have either won awards in the last couple of years or are currently shortlisted for awards. I've collected them together because they're all about empathy. So Solway, if you don't know it, is about a little girl who's upset because her skin is darker than all the other members of her family, until her mum teaches her about the goddess of the day and the goddess of the night, and how they work to help everyone. This has been shortlisted for quite a few awards this year, and it is a really beautiful tale. Small in the City is about a girl who's lost a cat, and she's searching for a cat in the city. You don't realise she's searching for a cat until the very end of the book. Spoils it for you again. It's a cross between a wordless picture book and a worded picture book, if that's a phrase. So Sydney Smith illustrates this book, and there are a few bits of narration on the pages as well, but it's the illustrations again that are absolutely beautiful. And then Umbrella is a crazy quirky book. I need to look up the origins of it because, again, this isn't a British writer. About a girl who finds an umbrella, and you ask it for things and they drop out of the umbrella. And it's about how she uses that umbrella to help all the people around her in the park. So that's a really uplifting recovery text as well. I've put, if you're not aware of Empathy Lab, I've put a link on this slide to Empathy Lab. There are lots of reading lists on there for you to find books to connect to empathy and emotion, etc. They're an amazing organisation, so do check them out. Okay. Oh, and there's lots of authors reading stories on Empathy Lab as well at the moment. So there's that slide's telling us about that. Last couple of books I want to talk to you about. I was planning with a teacher this week, and we came up with this amazing blended unit of work for year 3. Based on the work of Atanuki. So this is Atanuki. She is originally from Nigeria. She lives in this country. She writes amazing books. Amazing Africa, I've talked to you about before. It's shortlisted for the UK LA Information Book Award this year. And every single page is a page of information about all the countries around Africa, because in the West, we call Africa as if it's a country, and she wants children to understand the distinctiveness of all the African nations. She's also famous for Anna Hibiscus. So again, it's a core text if you're a CLP school. And they are amazing stories about a little girl who we assume lives in Nigeria, who has a life that any little girl would recognise, but actually the setting and the culture that these stories are told in is an African culture. So what it isn't doing, it's not tokenism, it's not a caricature of Africa, it's a woman who was brought up in Nigeria telling stories of a typical Nigerian childhood. They are lovely. So Anna Hibiscus is a short chapter story, end of year 2, beginning of year 3. Anna Hibiscus's song is a picture book, but it also has a rhyme in it. So what we did is we started with Africa, Amazing Africa, which is non-fiction. Then we looked at Anna Hibiscus while we were planning. Then Anna Hibiscus's song, because then we wanted to move from narrative into poetry. And then, again, one of my favourite books at the moment, and there's loads of these, A Kissy, which is and hilarious. I laughed out aloud a lot while I was reading this graphic novel, again about a little girl growing up in Africa, and it's almost like African Dennis the Menace, or Minnie the Minx, I should say. It's really beautiful. So book webs, once you've found one book, what are the other books that link to that theme, so you can extend a topic and really immerse children in literature? Right, updates. So Helen's going to start us off with updates to talk about Little Sutton Hub. Do you want me to stop sharing, Helen?
Yeah, don't mind. It's completely up to you. I had a meeting yesterday with Vicky Hewitson from Little Sutton English Hub, and she's keen to share with us and the network in terms of the work that she's doing at the Hub. She works really closely with Ruth. Ruth, I know, leads on quite a lot of the CPD that the Hub delivers and offers. They're obviously based in Birmingham and don't feel they've got great links with Coventry and Warwickshire, but we are in their remitted area, so they are keen to develop links with us. She's offered to run what they call a showcase day, and it will be a virtual showcase day, obviously online at the moment. Usually they host the showcase days at their school in Little Sutton Primary School in Sutton Coldfield. And really they use it as a day to be able to share the practice that they're working on at the moment, that they've developed over time, particularly in terms of phonics and reading. And support schools to think about, obviously they're a hub, so they're funded by the DFE in order to be able to share that effective practice, particularly targeted around phonics, share that effective practice in terms of that aspect of English development. So they're looking to host a virtual showcase day for schools in Coventry and Warwickshire, and it's open to all schools in Coventry and Warwickshire if you would be interested. And it is a full day online, and it does require commitment from the school in terms of engagement in that session, but there is a lot that you get out of it. They've run several even virtual ones over the last year, and schools have got a huge amount out of it in terms of developing their practice. But so there's a virtual tour that they conduct. There's particular specific aspects of CPD that they cover in the day, looking at decodable books and looking at phonics and aspects of phonics practice. So particularly if you're looking to refresh or look at your phonics approach at the moment, that might be useful for you. They also lead into supporting you to carry out an audit of practice within your school, and that's the final part of the day. And they are able to, if you do meet specific criteria, looking at your phonics screening score, Ofsted category, pupil premium, EAL, those sorts of indicators, they can offer you some continued intensive support afterwards, completely funded, if that's something that you're interested in and would like to develop with them, which includes having English advisor or specialist literacy lead bespoke support into your own school. So there could be a really good offer for you if you are looking to develop that further. They're keen to run a day quite soon after Easter, 29th of April. They've suggested as a day for me. It's still very much sort of in the planning stages at the moment. I just wanted to get a feel for people today to see whether it would be something that you might be interested in engaging with. It's a completely free day, but in order to have the commitment that they want from the schools that are going to be engaging with the session, they would look to have both a head teacher and either the phonics or reading lead from the school both take part in that day. So there is a bit of a commitment in terms of time. Ruth, have you got any experience in terms of the showcase days or in terms of accessing support through Little Sutton that you'd share at this point?
They get fantastic results, and I'm going to just put it out there. People are very cynical that because it's such a posh area, maybe that's why they get the results. And I think that's quite unfair to them. Their processes for teaching phonics are so effective and so well organised that what they do in the showcases, as far as I know, is they show you what they do. They kind of let you into the secret of what they do, and a lot of what they do is around application, not just teaching of sounds. So I mean, if phonics is something that's always vexing you, or you've got certain members of staff actually who'd value hearing those sort of very basic strategies, basic principles of phonics, I think it would be a useful thing to attend. They're always really well attended, the ones that they put on for Birmingham. So that's probably as much as I know.
So I wanted to just launch a quick poll, and I know you've only had a flavour of information from us today, but if that's something that sort of caught your interest and might be something that you would be interested in getting a bit more information about, if please do just let me know, just so I can gauge how many people might be interested in taking part, and then I can see how we might want to push it forward. It is open to all schools, regardless of your status, but they are looking to, offer intensive support funded for schools that meet those categories in terms of Ofsted, EAL, pupil premium, phonics screening scores. So, what I will do then, thank you for giving the details in the poll, and I'll send some more information out afterwards. And if you're interested, then obviously you can book on and take it from there. Really, Fab. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to whiz through the updates now, and I'm going to try and be as quick as I can, because I don't want you to miss out on anything. So rather than just focusing on a couple of things, I've just put tons of stuff in here. If it's not relevant, I won't linger on anything for too long. The EEF commissioned, and I'm trying to think who it was now, if somebody knows, put it in the chat, NFER, to look into why, sorry, I can't use my own computer today, why, what the gaps were because of the first lockdown for writing in Key Stage 1. So, sorry, reading in Key Stage 1. So they compared the SATs results in 2019 to the SATs results in 2020, so reading paper, year 1 reading paper outcomes. And they looked at, well, what's the biggest difference? What gaps have appeared in children's learning after lockdown 1, and what can we learn from it? So I just wanted to flag up this resource if you haven't seen it already. So there's a summary. It covers maths and reading. So if you're interested in the maths bit, or you want to pass it on to maths leader, that might be useful. So there's a little bit of a box explaining the sort of summary, but the best bit is the big box here that goes through 8 strategies that they think are lacking as a result of lockdown when they've done an analysis of children's reading papers, Key Stage 1 reading papers. So inference, not a surprise, but particularly with events and emotions, developing understanding of narrative sequencing, characters' motivation, comprehension was sometimes affected by reliance on illustrations, so that application of phonics skill wasn't there. Children needed support to organise and utilise key information, so skimming, scanning, retrieval. I mean, it covers everything, but it's still useful to have a more specific view. Children found it difficult to provide longer written answers. Children may benefit from more experience with a range of non-fiction, which is interesting. And some children were just struggling with reading the question. So what they've done in this document, the link was on the previous page, is they haven't just given you that breakdown. They've also gone deeper into each one. And all of them are on these slides for you, I think, maybe. Yeah, they are. They've talked about the gap in a little bit more detail. And then, and this is a bit I really like, potential implications for practice in the classroom. So I've just highlighted a few. Look at this, I love it. Children continue to need support with inference, do more role play, explore shades of emotion, do mind maps. Lots of these suggestions for each one are very talk-based, the sort of thing that we're talking about all of the time, or drama-based. Some very noisy children outside my office, sorry. I don't know if you can hear them. So here we go. Children might need support understanding a character's motivation, so using speech or thought bubbles, we've got highlighted here. So it's actually quite a practical document. If you don't even want to download it, I've got it on all of these slides for you. It might be something that you present to the Year 2 teacher, or you have a short planning session with the Year 2 teacher around some of these pedagogies to make sure that the gaps are being addressed in your own schools. Moving on. CLPE have just released, again, another lockdown summary document looking for how reading for pleasure has been improved in many cases, but also obviously has suffered because of lockdown. There's quite a nice few bits of gems around what we could be doing about it in that document. Free and downloadable from the CLP website. Home learning. So I've got a bee in my bonnet at the moment about, do you know what? It wasn't all that bad. And in many cases, we forged links with home and home learning in ways, you know how everything's been accelerated because of lockdown, or use of technology, the demise of the high street. And I do wonder if our relationship with families and our relationship with home learning has been accelerated as well because of the pandemic. This is a handout you can download from the Open University Reading for Pleasure website. But I'd really encourage you, in your role as an English leader, to think about how can we keep the momentum going? What have we done that's really encouraged reading for pleasure and reading at home during the last year that could just dwindle away now the kids are back in school and we're not thinking so much about what they do at home? How can we sustain good practice? So if nothing else, it's quite a nice flyer to send home. But the reason I've included it is because I think it's something that as leaders we need to think about at this moment in time. Okay. Right. Quick quote from Doug Lemov. Bless him. You might know Reading Reconsidered. He is the brains behind Teach Like a Champion, I think it's called. And he's actually, when you read his books or you read anything he's written on reading, he takes a really structured approach to reading instruction. So how wonderful was it when he tweeted this? I was really impressed. This is only my opinion, but if you want to mitigate learning loss from the pandemic, read aloud to or with children from challenging and engaging books that are slightly above their comfort range, just slightly above their comfort range for independent reading, as much as you possibly can. Now, I know you will be reading to your children a lot. Can you be confident that every teacher in your school is reading challenging texts out aloud to their children as often as possible? Because it seems like quite a quick fix for some of the simple gaps that have opened up in terms of children's reading. Another byproduct of lockdown are virtual libraries. Keep an eye out. There are 3 here. The reason I think we should be looking out for books online is because we are always worried, aren't we, about children's access to books, that they don't have enough access to books, that they don't have enough books in their homes. And because of that, a lot of organisations like World Book Day, National Literacy Trust have put some reading material online for children to read. And indeed, so have some libraries. They've now got virtual libraries where you can borrow books online. And so have some schools. This is Lee Forest, which is a Birmingham school. I've actually hyperlinked this to their website. This is their virtual library. And I apologise if some of you have already done this. But if you click on these books, you get a teacher reading the books aloud to the children, or you'll get an extract from one of the books, or you'll get some information about reading at home. So it's, and look, they've even put the Open University home reading flyer on there as well. It's a really easy interface for parents to use to connect them to the world of reading that you may be doing with your children at home. Their IT technician keeps on top of it, which I know might not be the situation for everybody. You might not have an IT technician, but I think it's fairly easy to set up. But how are we making sure those links with home reading are vibrant still, even though we've got the children back in school? Oh, I've just pressed the hyperlink. You can't see that, so that's fine. Here are some websites where you can access online reading material, including poetry. So don't forget, if children aren't reading enough at home, you could send, technically, there's so many children's poems, you could send a poem home every night for your children to read if they enjoy poetry. Do we send enough poetry home for the children to read? So websites like the Poetry Archive, for example, have got lots of free poems to download on. You don't need a poetry anthology book. You don't need a library at home. There are lots of places online you can get and download free poems. I told you I had a lot to talk to you about, and I'm whizzing through it. So just catch the bits that you think are useful to you, and you will get the website, you will get the PowerPoint as always if you want to investigate any of these things further. So the National Literacy Trust have just, and it's the first year they've done it, they have just launched the registration for the National Reading Champions Quiz. It's a really fun event. It's going to be held online this year. You can enter a team of children to the quiz, and they'll be grand. If they make it through to the final, there are all sorts of prizes that they can win. It's national. It's going to be held in regional hubs, regional hub events. And it's very similar to the National Reading Quiz that you may be familiar with that's happened in the past, where you would physically go to a school or a library to take part in the quiz. That's because the NLT have bought the license for that quiz. So they now are the people that deliver that National Reading Quiz. So the only caveat with this is it's for 10 to 14-year-olds. I'm fairly familiar and not bribable. I'm fairly familiar with the questions because I've been one of the authors, along with my friend Beck Kennedy, of the quiz questions this year. That was a harder gig than I was expecting. And even though it's for 10 to 14-year-olds, you do need a fairly high reading age to succeed. So what I've been suggesting is, if you've got a team of bookworms, year 6 bookworms, this would be brilliant. If you're looking for ways to extend your most extraordinary readers in year 6, this could be it, and they will love it. Just a quick advert for this. This has just come into being. It's called the Centre for Literacy and Social Justice. There's a handful of resources on here at the moment. There will be more resources moving forward. But what this actually is a powerhouse of researchers like Gemma Moss and Teresa Kremin, people like Jonathan Douglas, the chair of the National Literacy Trust, all coming together to form a strong body of professionals to lobby the government about the place of literacy in social mobility. So what I'm saying to you about this organisation is, you won't find a lot of resources on there yet, but expect to see something happening from this group of people. There is a real concern amongst people who know and understand how children learn to read and write that the government's plans for catch-up will actually be counterproductive, in a sense, to children becoming lifelong learners, lifelong readers, lifelong literacy lovers. So yeah, there's a lot of lobbying going on with this group of people at the moment. The other thing they're lobbying against is formal testing and testing processes. But I just thought, as an English leader, it's something you need to know is happening. There's a lot happening at the moment. No tumbleweed tonight. So the Kate Greenaway and Carnegie Medal long lists have been announced. So there's your Carnegie novels. Here are your picture books for the Kate Greenaway Award. There's Small in the City. It's been nominated. The Girl Who Became a Tree, which I remember talking to you about a few meetings ago. So check those out. The UKLA, nearly got there, just a couple more to go. The UKLA have got some fantastic free webinars on there at the moment. You don't have to be a member of the UKLA, but you can hear people like Deborah Myhill, who is the guru of grammar teaching, doing a webinar, a teaching poetry webinar run by Chris Lockwood and Rebecca Simpson Hargreaves, who are one is an academic, Chris is ex-head teacher. If you just check them out, there might be something on there that you could recommend to a colleague, you could run as a training session for teachers. Remember, and I know it doesn't always come back to Ofsted, Ofsted are going to want to know what you as a leader are doing to increase the subject knowledge of your teachers. And there's a lot of help out there at the moment from good people to support you in extending your own and teachers' subject knowledge. I think I've got 2 left. I might have a couple more, but I think it's only 2. Right, this is something that my English networks have all been asking me for. In fact, we did something, I'm sure I did something on spelling last time. We did a bit of a spelling review. This is an hour-and-a-half training session. You will have to pay for it. It's about £20 a ticket. It's an online hour-and-a-half training session which looks at spelling in Key Stage 2. Phase 5, it's called Phase 5 to Year 5. How do we get the kids from Phase 5, where they're learning sounds and they've got all their sounds embedded, to being great spellers by the time they're in Year 5? This is a huge issue across the country at the moment. So if you are interested in this, there will be a limited amount of places, although we are expecting to run it for quite a large crowd. I'm running it. I'm not going to be actually presenting it, but because my networks have asked me for spelling training, I've asked a colleague of mine called Janet Goff, who is one of the most entertaining presenters or trainers I have ever watched. She's completely engaging. She's from Lancaster and she's very northern and very funny. And incredibly knowledgeable. So I've twisted her arm rather than doing it myself to do this spelling session for my network. So that this is only going to be advertised across my networks and her networks. Janet's brilliant. So if you want spelling training, it's not necessarily for you. It could be for another key member of staff. If you think quite a few people in the school need it, get in touch with me and I'll make sure that you get a reduced price for that. But if it's just you, it's 20 quid a head. Okay. So that's just because a lot of people have been asking for spelling training. Oh, and another phonics event, but unlike the hub, this is the relevance of Key Stage 2 phonics for Key Stage 2 reading and spelling. So Ofsted will ask you whether all staff have been trained in phonics knowledge and how phonics is being used beyond Key Stage 1. So this is an event. It's £5 a head. It's on a Saturday. It's this Saturday, between 10:30 and 12 o'clock. It's run by Debbie Hepplewhite, who's quite a famous phonics expert and is I'm trying to think I think she's behind Floppy Phonics, if you know Floppy Phonics. She's doing this on behalf of the National Association of Advisors of English, of which I'm chair. You don't have to be a member of NAE. Do join us if you're an English advisor, but you don't have to be a member now. You just have to pay £5 to join in. So again, if that's an area you want to know a little bit more about, that event is happening on Saturday. Oh, I'm going to whiz past this. I just want you to know, children love reading online, particularly boys. It's a really good way to get reading for pleasure going. If you haven't heard of Epic, I'm telling you about it now because schools get free access to a wide range of online texts. A lot of them are real books that have just been made electronic, and audiobooks through Epic. So if you're not in a school, if you're a parent, you have to pay for it. But there is a certain amount of books you get free access to if you're an educator. So, it's a bit more than Bug Club. It's a little bit wider than Bug Club, and you might get some of your more reluctant readers reading through something like Epic. So I just thought I'd raise that. Okay, I'm going to leave the CLPE conference until the end because I really want to move on to leadership development. Lauren, thank you for this comment. We use Get Epic and our children really like it. It's engaged lots of our children. Brilliant. There's loads and loads of research about digital online reading and how reluctant readers can be turned around just by simply putting the same book on a screen that they might be reading in class. So it's definitely worth checking out. Thank you so much. Brilliant, Thomas. Thank you. Okay, right. I've got a task for you to do now. I'm going to stop talking at you. I want to look at leadership tonight. So what I've done is I've posed 7 scenarios. And what I'm going to do, if we divide the group by 7, I should have had this conversation with you, Helen. If we divide the group by 7, how many is that in each group?
Between 5 and 6.
That's fine, isn't it? Well, we're going to split you into 7 groups. Whichever group you get split into, what I want you to do, and I'm not going to do anything around leadership first, I just want you to get together with your colleagues, is I want you to discuss the scenario that's on this slide that relates to your number. So if you go into breakout room number 4, your scenario that I want you to decide the solution to tonight is, despite the new spelling scheme that you've introduced before lockdown, Key Stage 2 spelling remains an issue. So the 5 of you will discuss that scenario and come up with lots of solutions for how you might get out of that scenario, if you like. Now, you don't have to take a note of your scenario yet, because here we go. I have set up, how do I do it? New share. I have set up this Padlet for you. So I'm just about to put the link to this Padlet into the chat. And what I want you to do is that one of you or all of you on your devices go to the scenario on the Padlet that you're discussing and add some comments as you're discussing the particular scenario. If you've never used Padlet before, it's really fine. So if you're scenario 1, your year 4 teaching team are not following the planning structures you've put in place, what are you going to do? What are the things you're going to do? You press on the comment box. Someone anonymous has suggested they call Ghostbusters, Helen. That's strange, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But you add your comments in here, and what we'll have at the end is a Padlet that you've all got access to with each other's sort of leadership words of advice around each of these 7 scenarios. I've never used Padlet like this before, so I'm hoping it's going to work. But I thought it'd be a nice focus for a little bit of a leadership discussion afterwards. So I'm just going to put the link to the Padlet in the chat.
Do you want me to do that, Ruth? Are you there?
I'm there. There I am. And Helen's going to, I think, put you in some breakout spaces. You've got about 10 minutes to add as many comments as you feel would be useful to each scenario.
I'm going to open the rooms now. One colleague's just said that she's not going to be able to talk, or she's got an issue in terms of her microphone. So if you can't speak, but you can use the chat and you can engage, please do that. You can do that in your room. Otherwise, please put your cameras and videos on at this point. You're not going to be recorded in your rooms. If you're in a room and there's nobody got their cameras and videos on, please come back to the main room. That's absolutely fine, and we'll sort you out from there. I'm going to open the rooms now. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
That's everybody back with us. Thank you.
Brilliant. So, I'm not quite sure where to go with this next. I was looking at the Padlet whilst you were all typing. And the reason I set it up like that is because actually, what we could do is I could get feedback on each scenario now from you all, and that would take the rest of the meeting, and we wouldn't all learn what we need to learn from those scenarios. So you now have that link. Only people with that link can see that Padlet. So you can now at leisure go and have a look and see some of the suggestions that people have put. I'm going to share my screen and we'll have a look at it together just very briefly. Can I say thank you for some absolutely brilliant suggestions? I'm hoping that your conversations went well. I was particularly interested in, everybody's sitting there going, don't go into ours, don't go into ours. Number 2, because you came up with so many ideas. Oh, noisy motorbike. So Scenario 2, despite the teachers receiving coaching from you, year 1 writing outcomes are poor and children are not applying phonics that they've been taught. So you've come up with such a huge raft of things that you might be able to do. So number 1, why hasn't coaching worked? We need to get to the bottom of it. Those year 1 teachers might be really inexperienced and need more training. So you might be the person to model. You might have to go into that classroom and actually model what to do for those children, for those teachers. I like the idea of year 1 teacher observing another teacher, say the year 2 teacher, if they're strong, around in particular phonics, application of phonics and writing. Model phonics, look closely at the phonics lesson, so do some observation. So we've got some more investigation needs to be done into the exact reason why it's happening the way it is. Look at the teacher of reading in general. Is phonics being used across the curriculum or across the English curriculum? And then we get down to comment number 9. Is the teacher just being stubborn? Does a conversation need to happen with SLT if the teacher isn't responding to the coaching and feedback? Now, Helen will back me up on this, because I started reading these comments and I said to Helen, what a lovely bunch of people. Because my first comment would be, my time is precious. I've done lots of coaching with you. You're not taking this seriously. And it took you 9 comments to get to the really mean, hard-handed point that I reached far too quickly, can I say, far too quickly. But there is an element there, isn't there? If you've supported them and they're not doing it, then actually that your job is to hold them to account and maybe make life a little bit uncomfortable for them. And I don't mean that in a really awful way, but as a leader, if we want stuff to happen, we can't expect everyone to jump on board straight away. And I'm sure some of you going, yeah, too right, Ruth, I know what that feels like. So we need to be a leader. We need to not be intimidating, but we need people to realize that actually the buck does stop with you, and you are going to hold people to account if they're not doing the things that you know will make a difference to the children's learning. So I found that really interesting. I was being a real voyeur and watching you add your comments. But if you look at all the groups, everybody's had lots to say. And I just think Padlet is such a great way of sharing opinions, sharing ideas, solving problems. So one of the reasons I've set it up like this, and like I say, you can all go back, look at these scenarios, look at what your colleagues have said. The reason I've set it up like this is I am now going to be using Padlet. I know it's been around for years, but I'm going to start using it much more with my networks of teachers to recommend books, to gauge feedback from people. And I just wondered, as an English leader, whether Padlet would be a useful way of communicating with your teachers or indeed pupils. So if you haven't used it before, it's easy to set up. It might be something you'd like to investigate. Right, I do want some feedback, but not on the particular scenarios. So what I would like some feedback on, and I'll just check, I'm not going to share my screen, I'm just going to, oh, I am showing my screen. I want you to feedback on these things. So you can use the chat or you can raise your hand. So if I just open my participants up and my chat box. But I want you to think about these things, which hopefully you'll know, you'll be thinking about all the time, but also might have fallen out of that discussion you've had with colleagues. What are the issues to effective English leadership? That doesn't quite work. It should probably say, what are the barriers to effective English leadership? What are the essential skills, attributes and resources an effective English leader needs? And on a scale of 1 to 10, what number are you sitting at? If on an effectiveness scale of 1 to 10, what number are you sitting at right now? You do not have to share your number, but think about your role at the moment. On a scale of 1 to 10, how effective do you feel you're being as a leader? And if it isn't above 5, what are the issues that are affecting that? And what are the skills, attributes and resources lacking to be an effective leader? So what I'd love is just some general, put your virtual hand up. I can't see you as participants now, but you could put your virtual hand up if you want to talk about those things, or just add a couple of comments into the chat. Sheila, do you want to say something? That would be wonderful.
Definitely from my perspective, the biggest issue is release time during the school day to monitor. And the reason it's a big issue in my school is our school has 100 children and 4 teachers. So I'm a quarter of the staff, and I teach year 5 and 6. And my cohort are a challenging bunch. So, and obviously, of course, we're not allowed into classrooms because of bubbles, but I have monitored in other ways. But my most biggest issue is effective time, release time during the school day, because I can and I do support staff informally, and I do lead CPD, I do lead staff meetings. But what I can't do, even when we're non-COVID, is get out during the school day to look at what's happening in classes, whether it's a learning walk, monitoring books I can do outside, but even to speak to children about their reading and their writing, and gain that pupil voice, as well as seeing teaching, effective teachedness and teaching, and to try and find exactly what it is that I think staff need to help move their practice on. It's just time. That's my biggest issue. So I'm sorry, because it sounds like a bit of a perennial old chestnut, but in my case it really is an issue.
And Sheila, your case is extreme, but I think you've got a lot of colleagues right now who are agreeing with you completely, and you've probably all got a lot less time at the moment than you'd normally have because of circumstances. I'm really glad you said that straight away, because that's why I put skills, attributes and resources, and I see time as a resource. And when I'm working in schools, it's probably the number one biggest barrier to English leaders feeling effective and being effective. And I say feeling effective because the moment you don't feel you're effective, you get less effective because you feel disaffected from the situation, if that makes sense.
And also, Ruth, I've just had a performance management meeting this week. One of the things the head has said to me for the second time this year is, we need to unlock your time so you can go and do this, this and this. And I know she's finding it a pressure to unlock my time. So I want to try and find a solution with her. But I think when even your leader is finding it hard, then together we've got to look for a solution, and it's not going to be easy, but we'll keep trying.
And at least you've got someone on your side. There will be people who, again, don't need to reveal themselves, who feel they haven't necessarily got senior leaders or other members of if they're senior leaders themselves, other members of the team who understand that time issue with English in particular, particularly if you've got a library, particularly if it's the key issue in your school. Reading, for example, there'll be a deep dive in reading, whatever school you are. So I think it's particularly challenging for English leaders because you've got the biggest job and you've got the most important job. And it's really important you communicate that with the other leaders in your school. Do the other leaders in your school recognise it is a bigger role? Is there something you can do to get them to recognise the importance of your role? In terms of time, please put your hand up if you want to talk, or leave a comment in the chat, especially if there's anything other than time you want to talk about. In terms of time, I would suggest, now, these are only really small things, but obviously I haven't been able to physically get into schools in the way that I normally would to monitor. So part of my role as an English advisor is to monitor. And obviously I haven't been able to do that because I haven't been able to physically get into school. I had a lot of success with one school, even though they sent the teachers over the edge to begin with, they loved it in the end, where school teachers were recording themselves teaching on iPads and sending me links to videos that I was then watching and giving them feedback face to face in their lunch hours and things like that on Google. I know that's really intimidating, but actually it took a lot of the sting out of observations. The teachers were more relaxed because I wasn't there with a clipboard watching them, and we could watch bits of the video back together and talk about it. Now, this was quite a trendy thing to do years ago, and I cannot remember, we had it in our own school, what the cameras were called that schools were getting in all the time.
Iris Connect.
Thank you so much, Helen. Oh, look at that, great idea. Playground duty for pupil voice. Thank you. Yeah, fantastic. We don't need Iris Connect. Sorry, Iris Connect. You just need an iPad these days. We've got the technology to do that sort of thing. I'm trying to think what else I did. I've had people scanning work and sending it to me so that I can do gap analysis for them on writing. There was something else I thought of that was that took less time because we were remote than more time. I'll come back to it. Is there anything else that, you know, it's a bigger discussion to have maybe, and maybe it's one we can keep returning to during these meetings to help each other out. There is tons of stuff in that Padlet, you know, loads of great ideas that I hadn't considered, particularly around pupil voice. So we need to just keep learning from each other in terms of coming up with solutions to these things. Are there any other comments? Okay, so what I've done, and I'm sorry if this is a bit patronising, but I thought it might help us sort of really define what our roles are as English leaders in school, is I've come up with my own little sort of job description of the things that are the responsibilities of an English leader. And it's partly because if you're being challenged by governance or you're being challenged by SLT, if you're not SLT, to prove that your work is having an impact, and you might not be having those challenges now, but you will at some point, particularly with the deficit in learning, can you, hand on heart, say that all of these things that I put on this slide are part of your day-to-day role as an English leader? Because if they're not, they're because of time or because of resources, then I would argue you shouldn't be held to accountable for pupils' outcomes, because if you're not able to do the things that I put on this slide, you will struggle to have a rapid impact on pupil outcomes. And actually, that isn't just about failing schools anymore. That's about all schools at the moment. So a passion for English, an expert knowledge of the curriculum, a vision. Have you got a clear vision that everybody understands for English, and a strategy for getting there that you have time to, review regularly? Are you aware of the ideas and issues governing the teaching of English? And do you, and this is what Sheila was talking about, play a part in the monitoring of English for all pupils across the school? You need at least an overview of that monitoring, even if you're not doing it yourself. Do you have a clear overview of pupil progress and attainment? Is that shared with you? Do you know what year 4 looks like compared to year 1 or year 6? Are you getting ongoing leadership CPD, which you are, which is good. We can all tick that one today. Do you play a part in the ongoing CPD of staff? And Sheila mentioned that as well. Are you developing networks with other schools, I should have said, school networks, leaders and English specialists? The biggest piece of advice I could ever give anyone about doing their job effectively is to find as many like-minded people as possible to help you. That is 100% how I have ever succeeded at anything. It could be people within your school, it could be colleagues from other schools that you've met through events like this, hopefully one day face to face. It could be people from your wider network of schools locally, but find your professional friends and honestly work together to come up with solutions if you can, and share ideas publicly. You have a role in publicly celebrating yours and the school's success and acknowledging when things need to change. And then the last one, being an English leader demands an unrelenting ambition for all the children and their families. Now that one is completely different because that's a bit of a soft skill, but actually that can only be achieved. You can only have unrelenting ambition for all your children, their families, if you're able to act on things. Otherwise, what you'll be is someone with a desire for all the children to do well, but not necessarily the tools to make it happen as part of your leadership role. So I'll send this to you with the typos sorted. And I would love it if we could add more to this, if we could do this as a group in terms of, we're English leaders, we're proud, we know how big our role is, and we know how to get it done in the time we've got and with the resources we've got, and we will all help each other to do that. This is interesting. Hi, Hayley. We began our practice deep dives in the previous academic year. Everybody was paired with a member of SLT and coached through the process. They're observing each other. Isn't that great? So you're looking much more, Hayley, there at peer coaching, which only works if you can up the level of subject knowledge for all your teachers. which I know you've got some great teachers at your school, including reflection, whilst also giving SLT. Great. So actually dispersing that responsibility, Hayley, seems to have worked well. Do chat if you want to, or there's something you want to add. I love that idea. I love the fact you might have the overview, but you have a collective responsibility to get the information. And that's why I put, you're not responsible for monitoring every single English outcome, but you should be playing a big part in that, even if it's just like Hayley has orchestrated something whole school. Okay, I'm going to move on from the leadership bit for now, and I'm going to whiz through a couple of things before we finish. I like the Padlet idea, and I'd love your feedback on that, and where we might go with it as a group further down the line. Even when we're back face to face, it might be a nice way of having our own little sort of chat group where we can share ideas with each other. I wanted to just highlight, this should have gone in the updates really, where we are with writing at the moment, and what I think is important in terms of writing. Now, I need about 15 minutes to do this, and I haven't got 15 minutes, so I'm just going to explain just a few key things. This is hyperlinked to a really amazing website called the Writing for Pleasure Centre. You might have seen the book actually by Ross Young, their names are on a later slide, and Felicity Ferguson. Together they are Writing Rocks and the Writing Pleasure Centre. And they're just obsessed at the moment with the best way to heal our writers is to actually foreground the pleasure of writing in our formal writing lessons. And there are lots and lots of things to explore on their website. They've also got a couple of books. One's about research and one is about making the research work in your classroom. So this is what they call, I can't say, the effective domains of writing for pleasure. And I like these the little cat bears. I don't know what they are exactly, but I like these things in brackets here. So things like enjoyment and satisfaction. When your children write, do they get enjoyment and satisfaction out of it, or is it a chore? Are they able to express who they are, their writer's identity? Do they know why they're writing? Are they doing it because they want to, or because you've asked them to? Now, I know most of what we ask children to do, they do because we ask them to. But if we can drive it through their own need, want, or desire, then quite often the writing improves as a result. Agency, I have a say. I have shaped this writing journey myself. I've made lots of decisions along the way. And self-regulation. I do know what I'm supposed to do and I know how to do it. That bit is the bit we do lots of. These boxes are the ones we do less of. And what that leads to is children being asked to do writing that doesn't float their boat and isn't going to be effective as an outcome as a result. So this is what Ross and Felicity say writing for pleasure teachers do. And they're not talking about it in the same way that we talk about reading for pleasure. Although writing for pleasure could be something that children do as a hobby almost, they're saying you should build writing for pleasure into your teaching of writing. It's not an add-on. So writing for pleasure teachers make children feel good about themselves as writers, relate current writing projects to previous. They link all the writing together. They make it current. They make it purposeful. They ensure children see it as a crafted mastery process and not a one-off event. They encourage children to employ the skills and strategies they've been taught, and they set goals for writing, which they can achieve together. So it's a really useful website to dip into. I could spend a lot longer on it, but I don't want to. But I do want to pick up this idea of writing for pleasure, not being an add-on, not being a hobby, not being something you do at home, but being something that we do when we're teaching writing in the classroom. So now we're returning to writing and writing more. A lot of the children won't have been doing that in lockdown. Make sure reading for pleasure is a focus, and I'm sure it is in all of your classrooms, because good writing comes from great reading. Prioritize what needs to be taught and focus on getting the basics right. So don't forget about the transcriptional stuff. I'm sure you're not. Encourage lots of talk in your classrooms. Children will not be able to write effectively if they can't read and they can't speak first and say it before they write it. And then I'm just going to finally, because I've recognised the time, focus on this one. Make writing tasks purposeful. I haven't got the purposeful slide there. I think it's at the end. There are some slides here about the importance of moderation. And I've given you some anonymised writing from the end of the autumn term for each year group. Because what I thought it'd be quite nice to do with your teachers as a bit of CPD is talk to them about some anonymised writing that happened at the end of the autumn term across all year groups to discuss where the children's gaps are, where you might go with these kids next, and whether they're age expected or not. The reason I've done that is I think teachers might be all at sea again about what age expected looks like, and it might be worth doing a bit of whole school moderation around that. But the last point I want to make before I hand back to Helen, sorry I've run over Helen, but it could have been worse, is what do we mean when we say purposeful writing? What do we mean when we say we should be making writing purposeful? And for me, the main points around purposeful writing are: link it to something that the children have a firm knowledge base of, ground it in the familiar. And that's what Ross and Felicity say. Make sure that they're driven to do it because it's grounded in something familiar to them. And the way that I'd explain this is, if you were to teach persuasive writing, are they more likely to want to write about an issue they care about to someone they know, or are they more likely to want to write a leaflet about a theme park they've never been to? So always make sure the tasks are purposeful to the children in some way, particularly at the moment when writing is so hard to do. We can do the fanciful tasks, that's not a problem, but actually at the moment I think we should be grounding it in something more familiar. Make sure there's lots of drama and talk, purposeful drama and talk before they write, and make sure they have, as often as possible, a genuine audience for their writing that isn't just you. It could be the head teacher, it could be a parent, it could be a family member, it could be another child, it could be the local newspaper, it could be a celebrity. But the moment they have a tangible audience, children's writing skills improve and become more considered, and their basic skills get better. So that's my top tip, really. Make the audiences authentic. Okay. Oh, I'm going to talk about reading next time. That's my plan. Don't forget to put in your evaluations. I've been talking for too long. Your evaluations exactly what you need for next time, and I'll do my best to fit that in. Helen, sorry.
It's okay, Ruth. It's always the way, isn't it? There's so much that we want to share and do, and things have really taken a lot of time today, but hopefully colleagues have got a lot out of the session. I've put a link to the feedback form in the chat. So Ruth's absolutely right. Your feedback is critical to us in order to ensure that we can focus the sessions on meeting your needs. Just to clarify, because things have changed in the summer because we are online and things have moved throughout the year. So we're back for another network meeting on Wednesday, the 5th of May, 4 till 5:30. And then for the Coventry and Warwickshire group, we've got part 2 of our English conference on Tuesday, the 15th of June, 1 till 4 p.m. So we're back in the school day, which I'm delighted about. Obviously, for our colleagues from Walsall, if you want to join us at the English conference, you'll be more than welcome. That would be wonderful to see you. I've just drafted an email which will be coming out to you either tomorrow or Monday. So you've got these dates written down in terms of the changes. But it's 5th of May, 4 till 5:30, another one of these network meetings, and then the conference part 2 with CLP again on Tuesday the 15th of June, 1 till 4. But we are over time, so thank you so much, colleagues, for joining us today. Thank you for your engagement. Hope you found it useful. Thank you, Ruth, for your time and for leading us so well, as always. Look forward to seeing you on the 5th of May, if not before. If you've got any questions or queries you want to hang on and speak to myself or Ruth about at the end, then please do. But if not, have a wonderful Easter break when it comes. Thank you for engaging. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.